Welcome to Love and Hustle. We share unfiltered stories of marriage, entrepreneurship, and scaling to seven figures without losing sight of what matters most.
The raw, the real, the sacrifices, and the lessons learned the hard way.
This is Love and Hustle. Hey guys, welcome back to Love and Hustle. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Zach.
And this is the podcast where couples, companies, and chaos collide.
Let's dive in.
So we are so excited to be recording another episode of us together. This is a little impromptu episode that we actually didn't plan. However, there's just been a lot of conversations in the last few weeks around this topic, not only with ourselves, but even with the changes that we're experiencing and even with the conversations I've been having in DMs and with my alumni. So we're going to be talking all about mindset. And one of the biggest, I think, driving forces of success is mindset.
Mm-hmm. Or the limitation of success is the lack of a positive mindset, for sure.
100%. And I know one thing that you and I, more specifically, even in the last 6 months, we have really experienced a lot of changes that we weren't prepared for, but I know I was almost inviting. Mm-hmm. My mindset was saying, this is going to suck, but I think it's going to be the next evolution of us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, and we talked about this briefly in our first episode, my mindset has always leaned towards a place of comfort. And one of the things that Brittany is constantly challenging me with is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's a huge mindset thing that she's had that's really pushed her, I think your entire life probably.
Yeah, spends a lot of time.
To find success. And for me, I had a completely different mindset around that, which I think was extremely limiting. I thought that getting to a place where you had a good salary and you made a nice wage was comfortable, and that's all I needed to do. But was I achieving my full potential in that limited role? Absolutely not. But I would have never known or even thought to think outside of that without someone like Brittany pushing me and challenging me. And that's what she does great for all of her students. And I think everybody would probably say the same thing. As an entrepreneur, you have to have a support system, but also coaches that challenge you and push you and don't allow you to get comfortable, because as all seasoned entrepreneurs know, as soon as you get comfortable, your competition takes over. So you have to be almost fearful of complacency and comfort.
Yeah, and I actually love what you just said. You have to be fearful of complacency. You don't need to be fearful of competition. And that's actually literally in my presentation, first of all, I'll say this. I think any good coaching program is going to address mindset, because anyone who is going to push you into transformation, who's going to push you to be uncomfortable because they want you to have success, they're going to speak to the mindset barriers and the limiting beliefs that you are going to be faced with in that transformation. So number one, I think the sign of a really good coach is somebody who's willing to address your mindset and say things to you that are going to be hard to hear. But in my presentation, there is a section. What was it that you just said? I just totally had.
Be fearful of complacency.
Yes, fearful of complacency. And when you begin to have the mindset of being in competition with yourself, the only place for you to become is better. Mm-hmm. The only place for you to evolve is the next thing, because you're only looking to yourself. And I think a mindset, that's a mindset shift that you have to consciously choose to not look at your peers and feel, obviously we look to our peers and we think, oh, we're not as good enough. Oh, we, you know,
I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money.
Yeah. Or like, I can never do what she does because I don't have those things, or, we can't look to others to measure ourselves. The only measurement that we can make is our dedication to our own path. And so, realizing that when you shift that mindset of competing with who you are and who you're evolving to be, not becoming complacent, not becoming competitive in a negative way, but in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being competitive with yourself is the most important thing. It's one of those things as a parent, I think that team sports are great because they help to develop a team dynamic where you learn to depend on other people. However, independent sports like golf, gymnastics, that really foster a self-competitive edge, I think are transformational for a completely different reason. So as parents, I think it's really important to expose your kids to both the team dynamic and the individual challenges.
I totally agree.
I was a team player my entire life, and I think I missed the opportunity. I played at golf, but it was never a competitive pursuit. I think doing both is extremely important from a developmental standpoint and from a mindset standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. So I ran cross country. And I remember so when when you're running, if you're not a runner, you have like your personal record. And I was never, because I kind of knew I wasn't good. Let's just be honest. I was not good. I was never going to place, and I was never going to get a trophy or a medal. The only thing that I could actually have as an achievement was beating my personal record. Mm-hmm. And it was like in that, I think about running and being like exhausted and having to talk yourself to a finish line. Mm-hmm. And also to talk yourself to a finish line knowing you aren't going to be the best.
But you're better than you were yesterday.
But you were better than you were yesterday.
I love that 100%. And Tom Bilyeu has a very simple saying. He says if you put in your energy and effort into anything, the only certain thing is that you'll get better at it. It doesn't matter what it is. It's really simple when you break it down to like the raw meat of the issue is if you focus time, effort, energy on any task, you will be better tomorrow than you are today. And it's those incremental daily gains that can take a scrawny little kid to a muscle building champion. It just takes commitment.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of commitment, I think you hear people talk about lack of follow through, and there's a lot of people who draw attention to your ability to have respect for yourself, and that following through, being committed, is an actual form of self-love. And that for a lot of people that are challenged with implementation, execution, follow through, have a much deeper rooted mindset issue around self-respect and self-worth, and recognizing that a piece of you and showing up and doing it and working at it is a form of respect to yourself and to your desires.
I think it's an interesting topic and one that probably in the audience could go one of two different ways. But we live in an era of quit culture where when things get hard or people get challenged, they just quit. Like the problem with that is it misses the point of you must challenge yourself to improve. And you must allow for employers, bosses, coaches, and expect friends and family to challenge you as well until you reach a place where you have the mindset to challenge yourself.
It's so interesting. So I am a member of Junior League, which is a international women's service organization. And I attended a Decade of Dedication event. And this exact conversation came up. And the incoming president was talking about how they have seen this massive shift from women who used to come into the organization of the belief that they would be a junior leaguer for life. And then there has been this shift and this massive fall off rate. And they're trying to figure out why, like what has changed. Because the mission, the culture, all of that has stayed consistent. This is a 100+ year organization that has been built on a backbone of strong women. Why is this occurring? And they look to me because every single person that was sitting at this table has held a leadership position except me. I'd held some like very minor leadership positions, but like in the totem pole, it was like 10 down. Okay. So, and they were like, it's really interesting because you're the only person here who has not served on management or executive level. And they're like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think you're still here? And I was like, well, I don't think that I've done for the organization what it's done for me. I feel like I owe it, right? I also committed, like I committed to it. I guess I went into it with the same mindset. So I started to shed light on this generational shift that has really happened, from, I think obviously the millennials get really shamed by I think millennials and boomers by like that corporate ladder that we were taught to climb, right? That does create somewhat of a toxic mindset, right? It creates an environment that breeds hustle, that breeds burnout, right? And we've really lived in a world of like accepting that, right? And then you have this extreme, it's like the pendulum has swinged in the complete opposite, where there's now a generation that when things get hard, this isn't good for my my energy. Yeah. Yes, my mental health and anything that feels a layer of tension or discomfort. Instead of embracing that, instead of building resilience, it's just like, I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing it. I'm out. And in some ways it's really concerning. And it was really interesting because I was sharing a lot of our experience with employing this younger generation and in conversations. And stay tuned because we do have an entire 2-part episode recorded with one of my employees who is a Gen Z. And we talk all things about the Gen Z generation and what is coming with that. But it's really insightful to kind of understand like their sort of belief system and where that came from. I think you and I came from a generation where not everyone got a trophy. And there had to be a loser and there had to be a winner, because if everybody was winning, then how are we assessing if we're doing better, right? And there's definitely a tone for which, obviously, younger children, 100%. But when you start to get into understanding what it means to lose, what it means to fail, what it means to have grit, what it means to have perseverance, when you're old enough to understand that, that really has to start to be expected.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but this does play significantly into why we think mindset has become such a pervasive issue, and it stems from all of these cultural and business-related changes that have been happening over the last generation. But to go back to like writing the whole corporate ladder thing and how that's toxic and what have you, yes, constantly being challenged and pushed and measured against expectations and goals and whatever is challenging, but in a way, it's how you establish hierarchy and it's how you establish goals and you know if you're moving the ball forward. If you don't have goals and you don't have constant tension, you don't know if you're improving, and you fall into complacency. Corporations know this. Individuals don't always know this. And that's why individuals or entrepreneurs who are moving into business are rare. Because to have that sort of mindset that we need to push ourselves to do better and to move forward is, if you don't have that, then you are going to be an employee. You're just going to go to a company that's going to push you despite your resistance or hesitations to do so.
It's like, it's almost as if when you become an entrepreneur, you have to actively make the decision to become that person. You have to actually push yourself into growth and development for you to be successful. And when you remove a corporation who is pushing that along,
is doing that for
if you're not willing to fail and get back up, it's going to be very hard. If you're not willing to look at a situation and say, that was good, but I can do better.
Yeah, you need to have, instead of that conversation that you had with your boss that made you feel really uncomfortable and icky and you're like, ooh, I don't want to do that again. You need to be having that same conversation, staring at yourself in the morning while you brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Like yesterday in that sales call, my pitch was terrible and no wonder I didn't sell. Today I'm going into that sales call and I'm going to do something entirely different and see what that result is.
Yeah.
And that's what
It's like you have to be your boss,
Yeah,
and you have to be your own manager, and you have to be your own coach, and you don't have that dynamic that comes in a traditional like work environment. You have to create that yourself. So I think this is such a complex topic that we could probably make this a 2-part series, but we're going to really try to keep it concise. Yeah. But I feel that, when just going back to the junior league conversation, there was discussion around actually creating a mandatory training for, I'm trying to think of the verbiage that they used. So they called it a resilience training. Because, when you're volunteering, you're doing something totally for free, right? You're not getting anything out of it other than getting to be a part of the community, getting to give back to others. I mean, you yourself, obviously, you're not walking away with anything from that other than self-fulfillment, right? And so for a lot of people, when there isn't a reward, right? There isn't a trophy for doing it. When it gets hard, they just say, I'm out. And when you're doing things like volunteering in very difficult situations, you are put in a place of discomfort. And they discussed having a resilience training because they've noticed this huge fall off of people when there's usually a little shift that happens around like year 3 for membership, where they don't necessarily have the comfort of their incoming peers that joined with them. They start to break off into these more independent roles within the organization, and they don't have their buddies, essentially. And there's this big fall off that happens. And it's unfortunate because Junior League is such a massive, powerful organization internationally. So it's really amazing to see, just the recognition of it, and on a local level, specifically for our chapter, the desire to build resilience in their members. And I think that that's such a powerful training. So all that to say, I want to come to our last episode. I had Brooke Elizabeth on, and we talked about a quote that I share in my mindset section of my coaching program. It's a quote from Julius Caesar that is, if you want to take the island, burn the boats, and you will take the island. And I think that there's something that I really strive to help my students recognize is when they are in a place of comfort and they want to grow, but they're not willing to part with the comfort to get to where they're going. And to put it in a very literal sense, the comfort is your boat, whatever you are on, wherever you are at, that creates whatever environment. And you literally need to burn your boat down to force yourself to get to the island. And I really help my coaching students to identify what their boat is. What is their boat? For me, when I was starting, my boat was my nursing career. And what was wild is when I burned the boat, my photography business exploded because I went all in. It was sink or swim. There was no choice.
Well, I think that's the bigger message in the quote.
Yeah.
Is if you leave open escape routes, you'll never commit.
Yeah.
And there's another saying that says, lock the door and throw away the key. There's no exit. Like, you either succeed or die trying. And that's the whole general Julius Caesar motivational speech to his troops is, we're going to storm this castle and there is no retreat. This is it. We either take it and live or we die trying. And entrepreneurship in many, many ways is just like that.
Yeah.
But it's not a life or death thing. It's more of if you commit, you will succeed. Incremental improvements go a long way. And the only thing that's standing in the way from success in today's day and age is mindset. There's never been an age where there's been more access to social platforms and people, more access to tools, more access to internet and mobility. Like, you can literally do, sell, serve, become anything you want and do it anywhere in the world. The only limitation is literally in your mind. And I mean, I struggle with this every day as I have a foot in pharmacy, and I do that for security for our family, but it's a boat. And Brittany and I, we struggle every day. Is my time that I spend in pharmacy valuable enough for us not to go all in on other endeavors?
Yeah.
And it's the last boat that we still have. And we, full open transparency, have yet to burn that one. But I believe that if we burn that boat, we'd actually be better off. It's just one of those things that we even as a couple are still working through.
Yeah.
Because it's scary. Like,
it's very scary. But I will say there's something else on the other side of this is I've also coached people who their boat sank. There was no boat to set on fire. The boat sank. And the only option is to swim to the island, is to do it, is to take the island. So I think there's so much beauty when people are literally like backs against the wall, they have no other choice. And I think so many people, when they're in that position, live in a space of fear. And I actually think that that's one of the most powerful positions you can be in. Is it vulnerable? 1,000%. Are you at a place where you could lose everything? 1,000%. But because you are literally there with nothing to lose,
back against the wall,
it makes you even more hungry, even more willing, because there is no other option.
I will jump in here and challenge some members of the audience. I am a procrastinator, always have been. But in my defense, it is a self-imposed cage that makes me do better work. It's how I put my back against the wall, knowing I had 2 months to do this. Now I have 2 days. And oh shit, I'm going to get cracking. And this is how I got through school. I would delay. And then when my back was against the wall, I would lock myself in a room. I'd throw away the key so there's no escape. And I would grind out 20 hours worth of work and be done. So we all know what it feels like. Just some of us don't know it at scale. But when all your boats are gone and you're like getting ready to get evicted from your apartment or lose your home, it's amazing what you can find to do to make money and
so many entrepreneurs, especially those like on Shark Tank, they came from nothing. And I think that that's such a testament of like, there was no boat to burn. It was just sink or swim. Yeah. And I think the bigger mindset shift that has to happen in this conversation is that instead of being the victim, instead of being the person who has lost it all, you become the person that has nothing to lose. And so recognizing that, one, sometimes you have a boat that is holding you back. Are you going to burn that? Maybe you don't have a boat at all, but you have to look at every situation as an opportunity, and you have to be willing to push and have that perseverance and that resilience.
I've heard a lot of other coaches talk about it from an opportunity cost perspective, where it's like you have this opportunity and you can either take it or not. And they try to switch it up and say, what's the cost of not taking this opportunity?
Yeah.
Like, the cost of not becoming an entrepreneur is you don't have the freedom to choose your own hours. You don't have an uncapped salary potential. You don't have the ability to move and migrate as you wish. If you stay in the comfort, working for some corporation for whatever, you know, without a doubt, you're going to get small incremental 3% raises. You're always going to work at that same hospital. You have no mobility, and there's a cap to your ceiling. So
I think even in the entrepreneurial world, people build businesses that trap them the same way.
it's true. You can become trapped by a massive behemoth of a business, and that's an entirely different episode on how to optimize and efficiently run a business. But you'll never get to that point if you don't have the right mindset.
Yeah.
So that's like step 3 and 4 down the pathway.
Yeah. So another word that I really love that I use when I'm coaching is relentlessness. And I think Brooke and I actually in the last episode both shared that we had this relentless, unwavering, you cannot stop us desire to reach goals. Mm-hmm. And that relentlessness, it's like you have to, there's a moment in time, and it's like as I have more conversations and record these podcasts, it's like there's these moments in people's entrepreneurial journey where they make a decision and they're like, I'm going to leave weddings. I'm going to become the best X, Y, and Z. I'm going to, and there's this like profound moment that is clearly defined. Mm-hmm. And then in that becomes an unwavering, relentless pursuit. And that to me is truly like the entrepreneurial spirit, is to be able to like literally get kicked down, be like, I'm good, I'm still running, mm-hmm. right? And to have that just like constant inner work, inner grit, inner desire. Mm-hmm. I
would argue that every entrepreneur has that, what you just characterized, and the only difference between an entrepreneur who achieves billionaire status versus millionaire status is where they aimed that relentless pursuit. Billionaires happen to aim that relentless pursuit at the right thing at the right time, and they probably got a little bit of some luck along that path. Millionaire success stories, same relentless pursuit, just aimed at something slightly different, maybe not at the right time, and that's the only difference. Like, mm-hmm. But you must have that relentless pursuit, that passion. And this is what I tell a lot of our young employees is, to be truly successful in today's day and age, all you need is passion and a relentless pursuit towards that, and then the confidence to share that with the world, mm-hmm. via social media or some sort of audience. And if you have passion, you will attract people who like, love, or hate whatever it is that you're passionate about, and they'll be present just to watch and hear and see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And once you have an audience, you now have the first step in a successful business. You have to have an audience to sell to, which is part of the process.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to talk about a conversation that I had that I shared with Zach. I'm not going to get into too much in-depth conversation, but it was somebody who had reached out to me a couple of years back and was interested in coaching with me. And I remember she was kind of apples to appling things. And she's like, well, I can get one-on-one coaching with X, Y, and Z, and it costs this, and that, and what makes your program better. And I was like, man. And it's the difference between having somebody who price shops you, whoever's listening, you guys know, the people who are trying to price shop you and kind of break you down, nickel and dime you, and, you know, versus somebody who looks at the value of your transformations and what you deliver. And more importantly, I think what you can show that you deliver in actual social proof as well, right? And so somebody who's so focused on money and not focused on results. And this same mindset is like, I'm sharing this because I want to help the audience pinpoint how their mindset is working. When you look at something, are you looking at the value of the transformation you'll receive, the value of the results you receive, or are you looking at something in the way of
what's it cost?
What's it cost, and what am I gonna get out of it, right? Or like, what is the X, Y, and Z deliverable of that? Not what is the actual result going to be? And so recognizing that, because I think that same mindset, like hearing her talk through that, I circled around. It's been a year since that happened. And I circled around and I said, did you ever end up doing that program? And the conversation that followed was quite literally the exact same narrative and tone as it was the year before. And, you know, this person had said how they needed to downsize their studio because their sales could not afford the space they were in anymore. And the mindset shift that needs to happen in that moment is not, how do I downsize my studio to be able to, how do I downsize my studio because I have crappy sales? The question is how do I change my sales so that I can have the studio I have, if not a better one? That's the mindset shift that has to happen there. And so as I went through and I was just talking a little deeper with her, there was conversations where she was comparing herself, going back to that conversation of, you know, comparing, you know, being in competition with yourself versus others, right? And so hearing her talk through comparison of somebody who is in a completely different genre, in a completely different area, and saying, I can't have those things because I'm not that person. And it's like, yeah, actually, you're right. You won't have those things because you've already decided that you're not that person. And it's so frustrating as a coach to see such limiting beliefs that are so profound and almost feel obvious, like blatantly obvious that they are there. And to want to help someone so badly to recognize, hey, this is your issue. Like, do you hear yourself? Are you, you know, and to want to help somebody, but then to have them comparing you on price.
Well, I'll create a little analogy here, because this is how I see it. It's like you're looking out at the world, and some people, they see no opportunity. They see unfairness, and they see limits and barricades and roadblocks, and whether these are physical or proverbial. And it's like somebody who has cataracts before you go into a program like Brittany's, and after the program, it's like having your cataracts removed and you see things that you never thought or saw before. The mindset is like blinders. You don't see that there's limitless opportunity. There is literally limitless money out there to be had if you're willing to focus your energy and effort on it. The reason why, and this is just a philosophical comment, but the reason why there's just so much vastness and disparity between the super successful and those that aren't is so few people have the right mindset to be successful that those that do capture all the rewards. Like, it's astonishing.
So I follow this girl on Instagram, and she does a ton, she's a copywriter, but she does a ton of studies on the luxury market and people of wealth. And she explains how people of wealth don't, their identity, their belief system is that anything can be theirs. Any transformation, any opportunity can be theirs. They just have to actually do it, show up, execute. The major gap that happens in this is that, and she refers to it, she says middle class, is that middle class don't inherently believe their worth. It's a very, in the scope of the wealth category, it is just simply a hurdle. It's just simply an act of completing things, an act of a to-do list, an act of follow through, an act of, whereas in this middle class, there is a massive divide in the belief of worthiness, ability to execute, follow through, victim mentality. Yeah. Whereas, well, in the wealth category, it's a very unemotional thing. Mm-hmm. There's a complete detachment to the actual getting to success.
I'll throw another thing in here because it kind of plays on what we were talking about earlier. Another thing that I find rather fascinating is most of the ultra wealthy at some point in their life were poor. Because again, it goes back to golden handcuffs and having so many boats. A lot of members of the middle class, although the middle class has been drastically shrinking over the last decade, they have decent jobs, they have healthcare, they have all of these things that are pretty nice and pretty good. So they don't want to rock the boat. They're going to stay in that boat. But those who are poor, who have nothing left to lose, take bigger risks and they don't have the boat anymore. So I find it fascinating that it may, philosophically at least, be easier to go from broke to ultra wealthy than it is to break out of the middle class. The middle class, in many ways, it has you handcuffed because you feel things are good. I don't want to rock the boat, but it really it limits you from your full potential. That belief and that mindset. And granted, not everybody wants to be super wealthy. Maybe that's not the thing. But again, money is simply a stand-in for time.
Yep.
So
which leads us into the next thing, because I think that's been one of the biggest mindset shifts that I've been faced with as we've grown the business, is that while we've increased revenue year over year, I know this last year you and I got to a place where we were like, what are we doing this for? Mm-hmm. Like, you look at the growth chart and it's just continually going up, and it's like, well, what are we doing this for? And I remember we had this very specific conversation where I knew that I needed to stop focusing on that upward climb of revenue, but rather I needed to focus on what did it look like in the form of time, and how I almost needed to create a graph of my time in order for me to believe that we were gaining success. Because while the revenue has gone up, we haven't necessarily made, as the owners and CEOs of it have not necessarily made more money, but what we've earned is more time, which for us is, yes, we have made more money, but in turn we have been able to hire more. So in turn we work less. And that success can also be in the form of time, just like what you were saying. It's not just about money. Obviously, money is great because it's measurable. But for me, it was almost as if I needed to create this visual measurable. I remember telling you that I felt like I needed to put a cotton ball in a jar for every hour that I got back through our employees, so that I could have this visual sense of I'm actually making progress here.
I want to tell a little story about this, because this dynamic played in not only into our business but into our marriage. And as a podcast about family and entrepreneurship, we really struggled in explaining this to each other, because there was a point in time where I was like, look, we need to scale so that we can hire people. And you were like, I don't want to scale. I don't want to hire people. And there were things that, in order for us to maintain our revenue, which equated to our lifestyle at the time, we couldn't make less revenue, but we could pay other people and get back some time. So Brittany did a time audit where it was like, at the time she was doing like 60 hours, and she was like, well, I spend 20 hours a week shooting, and I spend 10 hours a week editing, and I spend 15 hours a week doing marketing, and then I spend 10 hours a week at Junior League, which is a form of marketing. And we broke it all down. I was like, okay, well, let's take this 20 hours.
Those were not literal numbers,
Not literal,
by the
but
way.
just arbitrary. But for
Just,
illustration
yes, those
purposes,
are just, yes.
we were like, okay, so Brittany does it in 20, but we're going to hire somebody and allocate 30 hours to editing or whatever that thing was. And then we hired somebody, and that was off of Brittany's plate. So she went from 60 to 40. And then it was like, okay, well, if we get a second shooter and Brittany does only 60% of the sessions, now we can take this time block and we can hand that to somebody else. And what we found interesting about that is it allowed Brittany to focus on her zones of genius, which were sales and marketing. And our marketing became more efficient as far as an ROI, and our sales were more efficient. They actually went up. And overall, the revenue kept going up, actually accelerated.
Despite the volume not actually going up.
Yeah, the revenue accelerated despite the fact that Brittany wasn't doing all those things anymore. She wasn't wearing the hats, and she was more accessible to the family and to our children and to me. And selfishly, that's what I wanted. I didn't necessarily want the businesses to get smaller because I knew that that would mean other things would change, but I did want her to be more present in the family, to be less stressed. Now, granted, having employees is stressful. It's an entirely different dynamic, which we've had to learn with each other and with our own roles, who's better at that sort of thing. But there was a major transformation that happened as we did that assessment.
Yeah. So I remember that.
And it was really rough on the marriage at first because we were trying to work through all of that. But
yeah, and it's still, it's still something we're working through. And, the team obviously has grown even more so just in the last six months. The other thing, too, that I want to talk about, and probably one of the biggest things that we have said in the last 6 months, is that what got you here won't take you there. And I know for you, I said to you back in like the early spring that I felt huge changes needed to happen in order for us to grow. And you were like, everything's working great. We're smooth sailing. That would be horrible. Why would we invite such chaos into our life? Why would we like
we do every year?
Like, why would we rock the boat when we are just completely fine? Like, why would we cause a storm?
And dropped the match in the boat.
Yeah, and I was just like,
burned it up.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't you.
No, it wasn't me. But I think that because I've been doing this long enough, I had this intuition. Like, I just had this feeling like in me that I knew what was holding us back. And I knew that there needed to be a major, major shift that was going to be really effing uncomfortable. And, it didn't happen on our terms.
You walk into a room and you're like, it reeks of complacency in here.
No, yeah. No, quite literally.
Yeah.
That was quite literally where we were, where I was just like, I'm sorry, but we're growing. This is what we're doing. Everyone put on your sneakers. Let's go. And when you have people who are unmotivated, who lack desire of growth and resistant, that is a major, major, major red flag. And I have learned over the 5 years that, we've had employees longer than 5 years, but the team has really come together in the last 5 to 6 years, is that you can teach somebody anything, but you can't make someone desire something. And so any skill can be learned, but the desire to become better, the desire to see complacency as opportunity to evolve, to actually say, wow, I've become very complacent and we are in the exact same spot we were a year ago today. Why? Right? And obviously there's life circumstances and things that happen, but at some point you have to say,
enough's enough.
Enough's
No more
enough.
excuses.
Yeah, and make that decision. And I really felt deep in my core that there were foundational characteristic issues with people not wanting, people just being okay with being okay.
Yeah, I mean,
And that to me, like, I don't ever wake up and be like, I just want to be an okay photographer today. I just want to be an okay boss today. Like, it's like, no, I want to wake up and I want to be better than I was yesterday. And I want to get 6 months down the road and be like, damn, look what we've done, you know? And I think when you have that willingness to recognize that and you almost invite it. And for you, like, you were like, why would we do that? That's a really bad idea. And I'm like, because I know what got us here is not what's going to take us there.
yeah, and that's 100% accurate. And I'll even take it a little bit further down a CFO path. And this is kind of just like a flashing red light moment for any of y'all entrepreneurs out there or people thinking about it. If you get complacent in your business, things can look rosy. They can look good. But one thing that doesn't lie is your P&L and your financial statements. And one of the things that we've learned on one side of our business is there's a reason why you have to constantly adjust, modify, increase prices. Because if you are comfortable with where you're at, you're going to get eroded away with things like inflation, tariffs, shipping, like all of your input costs.
And it's not even, it's across it's everything that we do. And it may not be in the same format, but you have to constantly be willing to evolve, because if you don't.
Yeah, and even what you're doing in your business and how you're doing it, you constantly need to look at ways to be more efficient. And honestly, it's what AI is doing. It's transforming businesses, small and large. We just see it all in the news with these massive, huge corporations, but that's because they see this massive ROI. And it's allowing people to accomplish more with less time and less effort, and that equates to better profitability. But if you fall asleep at the wheel at your business, you will get eroded away with things like inflation and your competition that's not complacent, that's actually looking at their books every night before they go to bed and is trying to see if this week was more profitable than last week. And if it wasn't, then looking at why. They're going to outcompete you, and you will eventually go out of business, and they won't even have to have worried about you because they were worried about their own business. Benjamin Franklin had a quote. It was, mind your business. But he was talking about mind your entrepreneurial efforts. And we now say mind your business when people are bothering us. But
yeah,
it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope that this has been helpful for people who are listening to recognize areas in their life where maybe they have become complacent. They have, instead of being willing to look inward and compete with themselves, they're comparing themselves. Maybe, taking on a victim-like mentality, and really just shedding light on the space of recognizing your opportunity for growth, burning your boat, and really building that perseverance and that relentless pursuit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, there's so much more that we could. I
would just argue one last fact. If you're waiting for the right time to make a move, it's never going to be the right time. And I would argue that right now is the best time to take action on any sort of passion, endeavor, entrepreneurial enterprise that you've ever thought about. And it's getting easier every day, which means it's getting easier for both you and for everyone else that you might be competing with now or in the future. So it's a race. Get in it and buckle up. It's going to be fun.
Well, it's a race with yourself.
Yeah.
It's a race with yourself. I think really making sure that the emphasis is on that. But yeah, wholeheartedly. Okay, so the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was talking a little bit, because obviously we've chatted a lot about the process of mindset in our growth and entrepreneurship. But I think like on the side of leadership, coaching, I and my students know I will be very direct, but it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of wanting you to be better. So when I will point out to you, for example, when somebody makes a very profound statement that my clients just don't want this, that's your perception. That is that category of clients. That's your belief around that, because I'm a walking testament that that's false. So, when people will literally make these very profound conclusions that lead to a limiting mindset. So to say, my clients don't want artwork. My clients won't purchase albums. My clients won't purchase frames. Those are the clients you have right now.
Yeah, maybe you need new clients.
Maybe you need new clients. Exactly. And so, but it's a shift in like perception, right? Mm-hmm. And the willingness, I think for so many entrepreneurs, they actually fear losing people. They fear like, is this the right word? Disapproval? Is that the right word? Like they fear rejection. They fear like a client no longer wanting to work with them because they've built an offer that's not designed for them anymore. Mm-hmm. It's designed for somebody else.
You had that fear every time you raised your prices over the last decade. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose these clients. I'm like, yeah, you're going to lose a portion. Yeah. And you're going to gain some.
Yeah. And the ones, and for everyone listening, the ones that you gain will far outweigh the ones that you lose, especially when you build a business that speaks so deeply to who you are and what your beliefs are. If
you make yourself a part of the business, like Britt's always done a fantastic job of making her raw, true self a part of the business. So when clients connect with her or the business, they're making a connection with both. So even when she raises prices, there's still this connection there where the relationship persists.
And I think the other thing too is that my business has what I do is built on the actual belief of serving people. Mm-hmm. That like, it's a completely like I think that's one of the glaring things that you will hear my students say is that I actually help them to shift their perspective away from selling to their clients to actually serving their clients. Mm-hmm. And when you truly have a service-driven heart, like the mindset shifts that have to come and the limiting belief barriers that you have to work through becomes so much easier because it's a piece of your identity. That is the driving force behind it.
I'll be honest, I did not understand your emphasis on the service-driven heart philosophy 6-7 years ago. Just didn't get it. I'm like, I don't understand why she keeps saying this, service-driven business, service-driven heart, like all of these things. And then it started to dawn on me that it was the services that solved problems.
In the literal sense.
In the literal sense. And that created connection.
Yeah.
And simplified a rather overwhelming process for mothers. And then that was where the value perception was created. And then the product was sprinkled in there as a way to take the average and bump it up. It was like the like gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
And that was the benefit.
And I think for me, like through my experiences, that creatives, entrepreneurs, photographers more specifically, really struggle with sales. But what you will find in the creative space, and more specifically photographers who serve women, is you will find that the majority of these people actually have service-driven hearts. They actually feel deep fulfillment out of serving others. And that is what makes the process so much more effortless. It makes it so much more easier. It's why I do an application process, because I ask really intentional questions to sniff out whether you're somebody who's in it for the money or in it to serve people. Because let me tell you, if you only care about money, you will not thrive in what I teach you. You have to genuinely have like a true desire to serve somebody well.
Yeah, the money is a byproduct.
Exactly. 100%. And so, and I think that fundamental principle of what it is built on is why so many people can take the process of sales through my program and make it successful for them, because it's built on a principle unlike any other sales system. But the part that I wanted to talk about was the perspective of growth. And I think something that we have experienced is, especially, over the last few years, but more specifically in the years since we've grown a team and I've coached, is that they will make you the villain of that. And I've actually watched people do that. I've had a few coaching students that have actually, instead of seeing me and what I'm doing to grow them and to help them shed light on what has held them back, they will flip that narrative on me and make me the reason why they weren't successful, the reason why it didn't work for them. And this almost like expectation of like as if I'm here now, you do it for me. And it's like, no, this is still your business. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to show you the way. I'm here to coach you through it. I'm here to tell you the things that are hard. I'm here to talk you through those things. But at the end of the day, you have to be that person. You have to be the one to do the work. Yeah. And so it's definitely something in the earlier years I didn't really do a great job of creating really strong boundaries in the narrative that was playing out. And now I have a whole onboarding section where I spend a good 10 minutes talking through your responsibility in your growth and taking ownership of the mindset shifts. And it's really amazing to see people in my program. We will unveil some really difficult things that have held back their growth, and to see them actively leave the program and find a life coach, find a money mindset coach, go to therapy for things, because they realize that they've discovered something about them that's holding them back. And I really feel that as somebody who is pursuing their development, you have to take ownership of the opportunities and the things that are said to you. I should say, you should take the things that are presented to you
as opportunity.
Take those things and understand that you've put yourself in an environment where growth is the path ahead of you. It is your job to take that opportunity and make it fruitful. It is not the coach's job. It is not any of your peers' job. It is not your partner's job or anything. It is solely your job to execute on those things.
And I will speak to this on behalf of Brittany, because she has a very unique personality to be a coach. She is extremely direct, coming from her husband.
Okay, and I will tell you this. It's why I don't call myself an educator. It's why I don't, because I really feel that
You're not just teaching something, you are challenging the implementation of proven theories, ideas, things.
Yeah. And like somebody, I actually did a survey of my students, and somebody literally wrote, Brittany was the coach that gave me the soft kick in the ass that I needed, but it came from a place of love. And like, I think to myself, okay, so we were looking through a little exchange between me and somebody else, and I was very direct. I called bullshit on what was being said, and I just said, you know, this type of mindset is why you will continue to be stuck where you're at. And this is the way I see it. I will say this particular dialogue that happened, there was an invitation for me to present that. I first offered, and then there was an exchange back and forth, and it was invited for me to do this. So it wasn't like unsolicited. I should say that. But I look at it this way, because I know you are just like, I would have just not said anything. I would have just moved on with my life. But here's like my belief is like, okay, this is clearly somebody who has extreme limiting beliefs, who has a victim mentality. And we can see that conversation and that narrative played out in several of the comments.
Of the text threads.
Yes. Yeah. And so I sit here and I say, okay, well, if you're going to engage with me and invite me to engage back, if I leave this conversation with you and you walk away being like, I effing hate that girl, can't stand her, but I shed light on one thing that would change your life, I'll die on that hill.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's why she is uniquely
I'm okay. Like, I'm okay being someone's villain. Like, I'm okay. If I'm your villain so that you can grow in your life, if she walks away from that conversation in 5 years from now, she thinks back and is like, wow, that was valid, what she said to me in that moment. Like,
the reality of it is if you want to be better, you need someone
you have to be coachable.
You need someone like Brittany to literally
you have to be coachable.
Kick you in the ass. And we're married. I could tell you 100 times where she's kicked my ass to be motivated to do something. And there's been moments, I don't like to admit this, where she was the villain in my story. And it was horrible, because a spouse should never be your villain. That's like a terrible thing.
Sorry.
But it came from a place of love. And I was coming from a place of insecurity as a man, as a spouse, as a supporter, as a business partner. And do we always agree on stuff? No. Am I wrong sometimes? Is she wrong sometimes? Yes. Is it hard to admit when you're wrong? 100%.
Yeah, especially when you're really pissed.
But the reality of it is you have to be very careful who you paint as the villain. And then more importantly, who's the hero of your story? Because it should be you.
Yeah.
You should be the hero of your own story. You should slay the demons and ride off into the sunset. To be that person, though, you have to be forged in fire.
I'm the fire. No, so it's funny because sometimes I'll have students who message me. I do this thing that if you're my alumni and you're listening, every time somebody sends me a win, I screenshot it and I email it to myself. And they're like my little trophies. They're like my little victories.
I have them in pharmacy too. Every time I get a compliment, it goes in my pocket.
Yeah, like it literally is just like, and I have this email thread to myself. I just reply and I send another one and reply and I send another one. But every time I receive one of those, I always like look at it as like a little trophy for me, but like more than anything, I have like so much excitement and joy for the other person because I know how hard they work to get there. Sure, I helped them identify the mindset barriers. I gave them the blueprint. I helped them in the implementation process, but I didn't do the work. I didn't get in, I didn't do the actual ugly part. I may have been alongside them for pieces of that, but I didn't actually do it. So, and I know what it takes to work through those things. So when somebody reaches that space where they send me a little Instagram message and I get to screenshot it like every time. It's me being like, but it was all you. That was all you. I just was here as your guide. You're the hero, right? And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing is, more than anything, is a willingness to be coachable. It's also why I do an application process, because there are people who are not coachable. I have gotten better at identifying people who are not coachable, because when I was early on in my coaching journey, there were some times that I didn't ask the right questions in the application process, and I brought someone into the program who quite literally infiltrated everyone else's mindset and literally became like a virus to the group. And so realizing that in order for you to be successful is to have a willingness to be coachable, to be willing to...
And to be surrounded in other people who have that same sort of mindset, who are going to reinforce and solidify and support.
And it all comes from a place of love. Like, it always comes from a place of love. It's never out of like hurt or like disparagement, nothing like that. It is all from the place of, I want you in 6 months to be in my email thread of all of the wins that my students have given me. I want that for you. I want you to be the hero of your story. And so it takes somebody willing to call you out. It takes somebody willing to hold your hand. It takes somebody willing to get in a trench with you. And I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of coaches out there, or educators, that aren't willing to help in that process. And so, yeah. So, but I think this has been such a great conversation, and we've shed so much light on our journey. And I love also getting to hear the little sides of your interpretation from a marriage.
That's what I'm here for.
From a marriage perspective. But definitely knowing that it's all for the growth of each other. So, but thank you guys so much for joining this episode. We can't wait for the next one. I will be having on one of my coaching students in the next episode, who is going to be sharing how she literally went from having nothing to having her best year ever in her business, and what it felt like to have nothing to lose and only something to gain. So it's going to really piggyback from this episode, and just an inspiring story of somebody who quite literally had nothing to invest in. Literally nothing. And it's just such an incredible story. So I can't wait for you guys to hear that episode. And we will see you guys on the next one.
See you next time.
If you're a photographer with a service-driven heart looking to consistently deliver printed artwork to your clients, my group coaching mastermind, Leveraging to Luxury, is opening very soon. Whether you're just starting out with product sales, or you're a seasoned expert in the sales room, whether you're in a small town or a big city or international, this is the proven strategy that has scaled hundreds of photographers to multi-six figures with products and services and not their time. This is the exact model that has now scaled my own business to 7 figures with a team. In this 10-week intense mastermind, you'll learn everything from how to run your numbers more strategically as a business, to mindset, to the value-based pricing model that is scalable and truly designed for the benefit of the client. I'll teach you everything from consultation calls to the sales room process, to how to guide your client in a very intentional way that only generates the best result for them, but also for you. If you can imagine, it's like riding shotgun in my own business while I am getting in the trench of your business. I take just a handful of students one time a year. So if you're serious about making changes in your business and 2026 is the year for you, applications open very soon. Join the waitlist. The link is in the show notes.